Well, the Umkhonto weSizwe Military Veterans Association is calling for decisive action against those found to have looted the country's COVID-19 emergency funds. The organisation says it's outraged and deeply embarrassed by acts of corruption allegedly committed by ANC members and leaders responsible for PPE procurement across the country. The MKVA held a press briefing today on the outcomes of its NEC meeting.
MKVA is distraught and deeply concerned about recent revelations of wanton and large-scale corruption. Every manifestation of corruption should be condemned, exposed and acted against. However, the stealing and misappropriation of literally billions of rands of emergency solidarity funds in the context of the COVID-19 lockdown crisis, with the resultant increase in joblessness, poverty and hunger of an increasingly large number of South Africans, is truly beyond the pale. In its moral depravity and disdain for the people of our country, it is unequaled. It contravenes every principle that the African National Congress should stand for. Indeed, it is repulsive, counter-revolutionary to the core, and must be condemned without any reservation whatsoever. Indeed, it is repulsive, counter-revolutionary to the core, and must be condemned without any reservation whatsoever. The factionalism and disunity within the ANC that is also prevalent in the National Executive Committee, which is the highest decision-making body of the ANC in between the conference, have taken on such unequaled proportions that our beloved liberation movement is literally paralyzed and is failing the people of our country in their hour of need. This is tantamount to treasonous betrayal of our revolution. The ANC is in the throes of a deep and potentially fatal existential crisis. It is indeed a watershed moment, and the situation can certainly not be allowed to continue along this disastrous downhill trajectory. The ANC has truly reached a crossroads. If urgent, decisive corrective action is not taken right now, we stand to lose all the gains of our hard-fought for liberation struggle.
Okay, joined now in our studio, our senior political reporter Ziyanda and Ngcobo. She was at the MKVA briefing this afternoon. Ziyanda, okay, good afternoon to you. Take us through who was at this briefing.
So today we saw MKVA President Kebe Mapatu as the bite was showing us.
Gupta's, right?
Yes, he used to, as well as Des van Rooyen, the treasurer, who just recently appeared at the State Capture Commission, I think it was last week, as well as Carl Niehaus, the spokesperson, who we know has previously admitted to fraud and lying before. But nevertheless, there were lots of questions that were asked by journalists about the legitimacy of this MKVA as it stands to actually be speaking out against corruption and malfeasance related to COVID-19 relief funds. They came out hard on President Cyril Ramaphosa. They didn't want to quite admit it, but if judging from their statement, they're basically saying that the ANC NEC led by Ramaphosa is weak, it's indecisive, and it's actually selecting who it wants to tackle when it comes to allegations of corruption. I, of course, then asked them, are they going to be consistent in their calls? Because they were saying that, you know, they would have expected more than just a statement from the NEC regarding Khusela Deko, who's, of course, the president's spokesperson, and Bandile Masuku, the MEC in Gauteng. They were saying that, you know, they should have taken a stronger stance. They couldn't just come out with a weak statement as such as the one that they released. And I then asked her, what do you want to happen to Ace Magashule, whose sons have allegedly bagged a tender worth 2.5 million rand in the Free State? And they were saying there needs to be a distinction now that's made between, you know, the children of leaders within the governing party and those who actually have jobs jobs within the state. And of course, we know that within the NEC, there was recently a debate around whether or not the children of leaders within the ANC should do business with the state. The MKMVA is saying there's nothing wrong or corrupt around the tender that Ace Magashule's sons received. And in actual fact, if people have a problem with Magashule, they should deal with him alone and not involve his children.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I've understood what the MKMVA is saying. They're saying that the allegations that if the Diko family, if the Tandisizwe Diko actually did receive a contract, that's wrong.
Yes.
If Ace Magashule's sons received a contract, that's not wrong.
100%. And that was part of the contradictions that we were asking. I mean, one of the main things, even before we got to the specifics of the COVID-19 relief funds alleged corruption, the first question that I asked was to say, how do you view yourselves as a moral compass and a legitimate structure when in the run-up to Nasrec, you were seen as a factional organization? You were seen to, of course, be part of the divisions within the party, the divisions that you say still exist within the party, which has created a paralysis within the ANC-NEC. And the answer that I got from Des van Rooyen, the MKMVA treasurer, was to say that theirs has always been a consistent principle to say that when someone faces allegations, they should be subjected to fair processes. But then there was a contradiction a bit later to then say, but there was a resolution to say that if you're facing allegations of corruption, you should then step aside. Stephen, the issue here is the lack of consistency, and I asked whether or not they believe these allegations against certain members, particularly those viewed in President Cyril Ramaphosa's camp, is in and of itself a factional battle, and the answer wasn't quite clear.
Okay, I mean, this must be quite a bizarre briefing. I mean, if we just look at, I mean, again, to go through what these people have been doing. I mean, Carl Niehaus, you know, at times has been unable to, you know, even confirm or deny whether certain members of his family are alive because he's lied about funeral costs in the past. We've got Des van Rooyen, who we all know was, you know, on the Zondo Commission stand last week explaining how it was that he was appointing people he hardly knew to top positions in the Treasury, or that was his aim. It's quite a bizarre situation, isn't it?
It is, Stephen, and I think they struggle to respond to the legitimacy issue. I mean, you'll remember that even in 2016, when they came out to also publicly endorse Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, there was then the MK Council that was formed, and they were saying that we are the real military veterans of Umkhonto weSizwe. We are the ones who actually have a voice. We were the ones in the trenches, and we are the ones who represent the ideals and values of the organization. There was Ziyanda, the likes of Thabang Makwetla coming out harshly, and as well, they came at a time when other veterans were speaking out against the tenure of former President Jacob Zuma. I just don't see how the MKMVA, in its current form, led by its current leaders, will be able to convince the current ANC-NEC that they are providing leadership, the decisive leadership that they say needs to be given and provided by President Cyril Ramaphosa, given the people who sit on that NEC and given, you know, their previous actions, which they haven't, quite frankly, been able to justify, that they use the MKMVA for factional battles and for factional ends.